oftentimes what I see the most in little ones is that they blame themselves. Now, a lot of kids often do, but even more so younger, when they're picking up on the fighting, the difficulties, even just that general feelings of sadness and everything that goes around a divorce, they start to internalize that and start to believe, what is it that I did? And oftentimes feel unwanted as adults or unworthy, unwelcome in the world. And so it can really make a difference how we're handling those little beings around us, and not to assume that they don't understand or that they can't sense it or they cannot feel it, because they sure can.
So where does that sit in their bodies, right? Because a lot of people hold pain in different parts of their bodies, and they're so little. So where does the pain or the shame or whatever they feel about it, where does it go?
That can sit in different parts of the body depending on the child, depending on the impact of what's going on. But we will see it in terms of behavior. So we have children that very clearly show the difficulties, let's say in tantrums, meltdowns, crying, clinginess. And then you can also get the complete opposite, where they internalize, and you'll often hear people say, oh, they're such good kids, they don't cry, nothing's wrong with them. But that could also be a red flag, because children are supposed to cry. It's a form of speaking. It's a form of engaging a parent or a caregiver when they need something. And so I've seen children very young that are depressed, which a lot of people don't even realize that at that young of an age, you could be diagnosed with depression, with post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety. And so it will depend on that child and what they're experiencing, but they definitely can internalize it both emotionally and hold that in their bodies. And later on in life, as adults, we start to have all these difficulties or pains, ailments, beliefs that can often be traced back to those early years.
Wow. So a lot of times I do recommend for my clients that they speak to their older children about the possibility of divorce and kind of what that looks like for the family. Do you recommend that people speak to their younger children, and we're speaking 5 and under, do they speak to their children about changes that are coming?
Absolutely. I actually highly recommend it. I actually just recently collaborated on an article just on this topic alone. It's such an important topic. Even if they're babies, whether they're 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to sit with them in an age-appropriate manner,
right?
Of course, because we're not going to talk to them like if they're 15, but to sit with them and have that discussion about what's going on. And most importantly is to let that little one know that it's not their fault, because that's usually the first thing they go to. They start internalizing that they've been bad, that they did something wrong, and now their mommy and daddy are going to not be together anymore. And to ideally, I know this isn't always feasible, but to have both parents as that united front and to sit down and have a heart-centered discussion, which I think we can agree that in a divorce, the one thing parents can come together is when it's their kids. It's like, okay, we want to do anything and everything to help minimize the pain.
Right.
And so to be able, if possible, to come together and have the discussion that says, mommy and daddy just aren't getting along anymore, or we're just in different spaces, but I want you to know that we love you. This has nothing to do with you. This is not your fault. And just to send that message to them. Also to start talking about the changes, because we think big changes like, I'm going to go to this house and the other house. But children also experience a sense of loss in traditions. And let's say maybe every Friday night was family night, and you sit down and watch movies together. And they're going to start to expect that because they like that routine. And so that's going to really shift their world quite a bit.
Right.
So I highly recommend that, even if it's a baby. I know that sounds kind of weird, but when it's a baby, it's the energetic exchange, because they're going to sense a much different discussion than if we just ignore and pretend like nothing's going on. Then they're just going to pick up on all the emotions of the chaos and the difficulty around a divorce.
And a lot of times we don't talk about this, right? And I say in probably every podcast that I do, I handle the business of divorce, the paperwork, if you may. And a lot of families, even when I ask them in a consultation, they haven't worked through the practical side of what this looks like for the adults, and then, as we're discussing, for the children.